And judges, please introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Steinhoff. I am in Casper, Wyoming. I am the Executive Director of the John P. L. Bogan Foundation, and delighted to hear from you this afternoon.
Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Barnhart. I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm an attorney, and I currently serve as the Chief Counsel and Director of the Consumer Protection Division of the Indiana Attorney General's Office. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say today.
I'm Marcia Holland. I'm an attorney also. I was a career public defender in Alaska and moved back to Montana where I teach at the law school here. And I just finished facilitating 9 mock trials on Zoom. So I'm really interested to see a competition for We the People on Zoom, and I look forward to hearing from you.
And students, please introduce yourself as well as any of your teachers or mentors who are with you today.
I'm Luis Escalante from Robert C. Byrd High School.
I am Langston Wolf.
And I am Sophie Breaker. We are Unit 6, representing Mr. Phillips' AP Government and Politics class. And our teacher for today is Jamie Looker.
Great, thank you. Well, this is Unit 6, and we will hear from you. Question number 1. Thomas Hobbes noted that life in a state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. How has the human condition changed over time, and how is that change reflected in our expectations of government? Should the principles of natural rights or classical republicanism guide policy changes designed to improve the condition of all people? What are the most pressing domestic and global challenges facing Americans today and in the future? What policies can you suggest to address them? You can begin when you're ready.
The human condition has become more refined and technology advanced. There is good and bad about this new advancement. The government has gotten stronger as a result of the Great Depression, creating federal agencies. This has caused Americans to expect more from the government. Also, the military has grown with a job to protect people. The principles of natural rights should guide policy changes designed to improve the human conditions. Sometimes nations grow so big that they harm other nations for their own good. Government wages wars on smaller nations with an outcome of forging more stable nations at the cost of smaller countries or groups that suffer. This is seen in many Middle Eastern countries whose oil is taken from Saudi Arabia and controlled by larger nations, leaving them with. Our troops are there, but not all of them agree with that. This could lead to a civil war between them. In 1938, the Labor Standards Act was passed, which made so that jobs had regulations and limits that could be done. This act helped protect workers and their families. West Virginia coal miners had no set hours and worked for long, hard hours in dangerous working conditions, being paid little in script. After the passing of this law, working conditions became better because of regulated hours and payments of actual money. This was an improvement to the human condition, as over time people expected a better working environment from larger companies.
John Locke's natural rights principles of inalienable rights, such as life, liberty, and property, were the origin of the First Amendment. In Federalist Number 9, Alexander Hamilton states that the violent destruction of life and property incident to war, the continual effort of danger, will compel nations most attached to liberty to resort for repose and security to institutions which have a tendency to destroy their civil and political rights. Hamilton heavily implied that the protection of the citizen, both from external and internal threats, was essential to maintaining a stable country. If human nature is compromised, then the very foundation of the nation will collapse. Human nature cannot be molded, it remains. James Wilson once said, without liberty, law loses its nature and its name and becomes oppression. Without law, liberty also loses its nature and its name and becomes licentiousness. In this case, the law coincides with liberty, and the increasing importance of the two are essential to maintaining democracy. In the court case Fletcher versus Peck, the Georgia state legislature passed a land grant awarding territory to 4 companies. The following year, the law was voided. John Peck acquired the claims to the land that was part of the original legislative grant. He then sold the land to Fletcher 3 years later, claiming that the land sales had been legitimate. Fletcher argued that since the original sale of the land had been declared invalid, Peck had no legal right to sell the land and thus a breach of contract. The legislator's repeal of the law was unconstitutional. Natural rights currently remain a valid argument in court. Thus, it should be a guiding force in deciding policy changes to improve the conditions of citizens that it seeks to protect.
Over time, our expectations from the government have reflected our societal needs. Our healthcare system is one of our most pressing domestic issues. The system in place is very ineffective, with the World Health Organization data finding the US spends more on healthcare per capita than any other high-income country. It has the lowest life expectancy. In order to address these problems, greater attention in Congress should be placed on reducing healthcare costs. We also need to strengthen access primary care systems, increasing the rate of physician visits to better manage chronic conditions. While this is an important domestic issue on the global scale, there are more pressing issues, one of which is the threat of nuclear warfare, which can destroy whole cities and has the potential for killing millions. The new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty is not renewed in 2021. There will be no nuclear arms agreement enforced between Russia and the United States, with no remaining limits on the size of their deployed nuclear arsenals. The only way to completely eliminate nuclear risk is to eliminate nuclear weapons from the planet.
Thank you.
All right. So what role does technology play in addressing these problems? If we're looking towards solutions, how do we use technology, or is it going to hurt us?
I hope that technology can help us advance our ideals to other countries, making it where that we can help promote our views and have other people see how we want things to work to a place that we both come to an agreement.
I like what Lewis is saying. I believe that technology is a way that we can use, is something that we can use to advance ourselves in a different way. And it makes our jobs a little bit, not necessarily easier, but it gets us further to our goals, or gets us closer to our goals.
I agree also with my teammates. I feel like technology helps us more than hurts us in present day. I think it's easier to have data with technology and see like see different people's perspectives. And it's important in like evaluating how we are going to fix the world's problems.
So let me ask you a related question then. As I'm sure everyone is aware, the United States is becoming fairly polarized. There's been times in the past it has been, but right now it's certainly one of the more stunningly obvious times of polarization. So the concept of technology, a lot of people only they get their news from sources that reaffirm their beliefs. How would you encourage looking at the other side, or looking at both sides of the coin, or is that just not going to happen?
That's a really good question. I think that you're right. A lot of people get their news source from sources that express their own ideals. And I think it's important to follow news sources that are reliable on the other spectrum, or in most cases just like neutral news sources, which is really hard to come by these days. But I think it's important to have more of a neutral outlook on something if you're trying to show both issues of a situation.
I definitely believe that personal bias will always play into account wherever you look, regardless of what news source you pick. But I also think it's important to recognize this bias and look for other news sources so that you're not just limiting yourself to one perspective.
Thank you.
I agree with both of them, because saying that like you looked at one news source isn't just going to give you both sides of it, because one news source is always going to be biased. And like how Sophie said, we need to find news sources that are neutral and don't have a just single bias to one party or one ideal.
Thanks.
You talked about the role of technology to help advance. And so in the last year, we've seen a different role with technology with education, because we don't need to explain all the ways that happened. But what role does education play in helping advance the conditions, the human condition?
Education plays a huge role. It's very important, like that most or if not all state constitutions now have pieces in it about education. I know West Virginia, the state constitution has it so everyone's entitled to an education. Um, and I think that technology, just the ability for everyone to, even like now during the pandemic, for everyone to remain going to school, even if they're not in person, is super important. And like it's vital in um, it's vital in how just learning in general.
I think education is extremely important in advancing the human condition, like what you were talking about, because the more educated your populace is, I feel like the more decisions can be made based off of facts and knowledge or what you know, instead of just going purely on feeling. And we can work to improve the human condition.
I agree with both of them. Like technology right now is helping us promote education, get all kids in education. Like if a kid was sick and needed to be hospitalized, how were they going to get their education without technology? Now, since like how we're doing this right now with Zoom, kids can get an education from wherever they're at.
Do you think that there's an opportunity for improvement of education to more, I mean, West Virginia is a very rural state, right? So from that standpoint, is there an opportunity there to kind of increase, the quality of the education, whether you're sitting in West Virginia or Ohio?
I believe that there's always a way to better education wherever you are. I think it's just all circumstantial, though. It just depends on what your area needs or what the students preferably need.
I think it's important, specifically for West Virginia, to have more money going into the education program. And I think other states will feel the same way, that education is super important in the future and in future generations' development. So I feel like it applies to every state that we need to focus more of our energy on children's education.
Thanks.
I agree with Sophie in her statement saying that like we need to have more of a focus on our educations, because some states, they don't promote that much education, or they don't put much effort into the education. Like our state, we don't have that much support in funding.
And so if you don't mind switching gears a little bit, in terms of being an educated population, the United States has at times either played a large role in helping other countries or has taken a step back and kind of focused just on domestic situations. Do you think the United States should continue to be involved on a global basis in either providing education or funding or diplomacy, or should we be taking a step back to focus on what's going on within our borders?
I think that the United States should do both, but it shouldn't be just the United States by itself. It should be like with world organizations like NATO or UNICEF or those larger organizations as a combined effort to help third world countries with their education problems.
Thanks.
You talked a little bit about needs being met for the human condition in a way that's tailored to what individuals might require. So with that in mind, what is the balance between we're not going to get to it. Unfortunate, but thank you. I will lead off on the comments for today. So thank you very much again for your preparation and being here. I think you had a great set of prepared remarks. I appreciated how you talked about the human condition changing over time and leading off with technology. You integrated some of that into the follow-up questions in a way that showed some coherence and thought. That was great. You talked about, I think, some very clear, both domestic and international challenges that exist now or might continue to still be in the future, and linked that to some policies. And I thought that was very well done. I would suggest that in that you had some different pacing in your initial essay. So maybe just try to mirror each other throughout that, and just go at a pace where we can hear you and make sure that we're able to take notes in accordance with what you're saying. But in general, you prepared and you responded in a way that just showed your thoughtfulness and your research. So thank you very much.
I agree. I think you guys did a very nice job. I really appreciated your use of local examples. And I really like, when we, the people students, not just study the federal constitution, but also study the state constitution as well. So incorporating those examples, I think, serve you very well. I think I would have liked to have heard a little bit from a balance side. Some of the other view, the other side of the argument is X, Y, and Z. Something to think about too, in terms of this polarization problem, in social media and technology, perhaps is driven by algorithms and a desire for us to see things that we want to see. And so to get other views, we really have to go out of our way, because sometimes these these algorithms are pumping information that we like and enjoy and agree with. So just something to think about in terms of as you're addressing these issues. But I thought you did a nice job. Very well done.
And I'll jump on that bandwagon. A continuing legal education program I went to when I was a trial attorney emphasized listening to radio stations all across the spectrum, because my jurors are going to be people from all across the spectrum. And my client who's sitting next to me and whose future is in their hands, I needed to appreciate what more than one group is thinking. But it took an effort. And so for you all to recognize that, as high school students, I think shows a sophistication that adults often, or older adults often don't even have. So thank you for that. And I really like the idea that, of course, we all have personal bias, but it needs to be at least something that you can look at the other side. And finally, the example in answering my question of bringing in NATO and saying it shouldn't just be a United States problem, that it should be a global partnership with leading nations. I thought that was a really good answer. There's, as Scott said, the other side is, the last administration thought that wasn't the solution, that, partnering with international agencies wasn't good. And so just a thought out there that there's two sides to that thinking as well. Great job.
Yes, thank you so much, team, and to your teachers, sponsors, and coaches as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, judges, and congratulations to the team. I'll move the judges out to the breakout room now. And congratulations and great work. If your teacher doesn't need to say anything to you, then you're welcome. You're welcome to go. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks. Bye.